What's up, everyone? Welcome to episode 10 of the Ohio Sports Radio Show. Already 10 episodes deep, 10 episodes young. This is awesome. Thank you guys so much. I'm back again, Jared, with Chris and Ian, ready to talk about some teams that make us drink, and boy, have they made us drink this past weekend. Pretty terrible, but thank you to everyone who continues to watch our stuff. You guys are awesome. Got a lot to talk about this week, so let's go ahead and get into it. As always, we're going to start off with our best and worst of this past weekend. There was a lot of bad stuff this past weekend, trust us. Chris, what was your best and worst of this past weekend, brother?
Yeah, you got that right. I am going to say that it was mostly bad. I had a ton of choices for the worst. We were light on material in that area, but thank God for college basketball, because my best of the weekend was the fact that we have two teams from Ohio that are now ranked in both the AP and Coaches Poll in college basketball. Cincinnati Bearcats and Xavier Musketeers. They're both sitting there in the top 25. This is big for them, big for the city of Cincinnati, and that makes the Crosstown Shootout coming up that much bigger. So that's my best. Worst of the weekend, the crucial mistake by my Cincinnati Bengals on that final drive. I stayed with them the whole time. They went down by 2 scores in the fourth quarter. We've seen this show before. I stayed with them. We kept the faith up until the very last minute. Andy Dalton did not play a bad game. However, my worst is going to be that 3rd and 2 slant pattern to A.J. Green. Should have been an interception. Should have been thrown further in front of him, but just a bad play call altogether.
E?
Yeah, my best this week, I'm going outside the state of Ohio, since my Browns were technically off this week but couldn't stay out of the limelight. I'm going to Tampa Bay. The Buccaneers offense on Sunday were firing on all cylinders. Doug Martin, 235 rushing yards. Jameis Winston, finally looking like that number 1 pick overall that a lot of people thought he'd be. 5 touchdown passes, just overall great performance by him. That Buccaneers team sneaking up on people. My worst of the week, refs in general have been horrible this year. College football, pro football. As far as Ohio goes, that Bengals game is pretty brutal to watch. I don't think I've ever seen that call that they called on Pecco before. At the end of that game, I've never seen that penalty called before. In the Ohio State-Michigan State game, that pass interference call that led to the touchdown is a chintzy pass interference call. I don't think Michigan State would have scored that touchdown there in the second half without that penalty, but overall, refs have been pretty bad in football altogether this year.
I definitely agree with that. I think this has been the worst year of officiating in any level of football. It's been terrible. But my best of the weekend is my Columbus Crew winning the first leg of the Eastern Conference Finals. Their first leg was in Columbus against the New York Red Bulls. They ended up winning 2-0. They scored the fastest goal ever in the history of MLS playoffs. In 9 seconds, they scored their first goal. It was awesome. So the Crew, one step closer to the MLS Finals. My worst of the weekend was all of Ohio football. Ohio State, the Bengals, UC, all terrible. Every bit of it. Play calling was awful. They all got beat. Just an awful week for Ohio football. My beloved Bengals, my Buckeyes dropping out of odds are the playoff picture. Just terrible all around. Chris, your Bearcats went down hard. Just an awful, awful weekend for Ohio football. Out of the ordinary. Just terrible. But yeah, that's our best and worst of the weekend. Let's move on to, like I said, the Ohio State Buckeyes. What can you say? Just an absolute awful, awful weekend. They look terrible. For those of you who were living under a rock this week, Ohio State lost to Michigan State at home, 14-17 on Senior Day. Just terrible to see those seniors go out like that. A lot of emotions. Zeke Elliott kind of went off on the coaching staff. After the game, he called out the offensive coordinator. I posted earlier in the week on Facebook. I would give you my thoughts on my opinions on what Zeke had to say after the game, and I will do that. But that was just an awful, awful weekend by the Buckeyes. They've looked bad all year, and all Buckeyes fans have kind of been saying how bad they've looked, and they finally play a ranked team, and you hear all that. It was awful. They should have won the game. They shot themselves in the foot terribly. But we do have a couple Ohio State questions, so let's go ahead without further ado and get into those. I'll save the Zeke Elliott questions for last. First question from Chris Dias. How are the emotions for Ohio State going into the game against the team up north? Chris, Ian.
Well,
I'll take a
yeah, I can. That's okay. I can go ahead and start in on this one. I don't think this is really going to be too much of a problem focusing. I mean, this is, by all accounts, you can ask anyone outside the state of Alabama, this is the biggest college football game throughout the whole country. So I don't know. Sometimes a loss like this, when you win 23 straight, you have the tendency to lose focus. They kept games way closer to teams that were way inferior all year. They had few blowout wins. So I think that you can probably bring some positive to this. I don't think they're going to have a problem focusing at all. I think going into a hostile environment is going to be the roughest, toughest game that they probably faced all year. I think they're going to rise to that challenge, honestly.
E?
Not getting into the Zeke stuff because I know you said we'd get to that in a little bit, but I think as a fallout from all the Zeke stuff, I think everything that you're hearing from Urban Meyer talking today and whatnot, it really seems like there's a brotherhood in that locker room. And I think everything that happened this past weekend, as crappy as it was, I think the players are like, okay, you know what? It's time to pick up. It's time to regroup. Let's focus. I know I saw a picture tweeted on Monday morning that, all the M's were covered up in tape on Ohio State's campus. So I know the Buckeye faithful are ready for the Michigan game. I think they're putting everything that happened last weekend behind them. And I think come Saturday, they're going to be ready to go out there and take care of business.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, they're definitely upset. I mean, as a diehard fan of Ohio State, I'm really upset. You never want to see your team lose. As an athlete, you don't want to lose. And I know I said I'll talk about Zeke in a minute, but real quick, as an athlete, getting asked tough questions after a game, something negative is going to be said. And he's a young kid. I will come back to that. I don't want to get too far into that. Let's finish that in a minute. But yeah, it was a tough game, tough loss, but they're not out of it. That's the end of it. I mean, they got a job to do against their bitter rival. They got to go up there and put it to them, and hopefully they can come out with a win, and hopefully they can get some things to fall their way, and Penn State may be able to go up to East Lansing and get a win. You never know, but that game's behind us now. It's time to prepare. They have a very good Michigan team up north. That's that the Big House is a tough place to go and win. It's really hard. They got a good team, good coach. So this is the game that Ohio State fans. I know I've told people for years I want this to be a rival again. Going up there and beating them is great, feels great. But the Big Ten, Ohio State needs Michigan to be good. So I'm ready for it. I'm excited. I think they're focused. Urban will have them ready. Hopefully he takes over some play calling a little bit, but that's neither here nor there. We'll get to that in a little bit. But Chris, brother, thank you. Great question. We have a question from Lynn's Light. Lynn's wants to know, what about Cardell? She heard that he possibly could be transferring. Do we believe that? I mean, do we think Cardell may transfer?
I did see the tweet that he said something about walking up these steps for the last time. I don't see why not, but at the same time, they had a three-headed monster at quarterback coming back last year, and they kept everyone together somehow by making some personnel changes, moving Braxton to the wide receiver spot. I wouldn't blame him for transferring. Do I think he will? I don't know. I would probably say yes. I think this probably would be a good move on his part. If he's there to play football and he's not playing and JT Barrett's the guy, I think he might want to actually think about what's best for himself.
Ian?
Smart move, yes. I think it'd be smart for him to transfer. I believe the tweet, though, is basically him coming out and echoing what Elliott said and him basically saying he's going to the NFL. We've talked about it. Small sample size. Granted, that sample size hasn't looked very well this year, but he's got an NFL-type arm. Whether or not that translates over to the NFL, he's got a big arm, he's got a cannon. But I think the tweet was just him basically saying that he's going to declare for the draft.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think he's transferring anywhere. He should transfer somewhere and try to help his draft stock because it's plummeted. He should have went pro after last year. He would have probably been an early second rounder. A team would have took a chance on him. I don't think he'll make it in the NFL. I personally don't. I don't think he has the touch. I don't think he has. I don't think he can grasp a playbook, system that well. I think he is a great athlete. unreal arm strength, unreal. But I think he's going pro. I think he'll fifth, sixth, seventh rounder, in my opinion, if he gets drafted. He's been that bad this year. So it's hurt his stock terribly. I don't know. He should have went pro last year. But, Linz, thank you for the question. I know you have another question. And that question, as well as Brittany Dunaway, they both kind of had the same question. Basically, it was, did Ezekiel – well, Linz's is a little different. But basically, they're both centered around Ezekiel Elliott. Brittany wants to know, was Zeke out of line with his comments, even though most of the country agrees with him? And Linz Light wants to know, did Zeke hurt his draft stock by saying all that stuff in the post game? Chris?
Yeah, I'm going to answer probably both those questions at the same time. I think, sadly, at this stage in the game, it's tough for a player to do anything to hurt his draft stock. Coaches and teams have proven that they'll just want a guy that can play. They don't care if you're nice after press conferences. They don't care if you steal crab legs. They just want a guy that can go out there and win on the field, and he's proven he can do that all year. So I don't think he's hurt any kind of draft stock. I also kind of sympathize with him a little on those comments. He hasn't lost a game at that school, so being so young and having a moment where you're vulnerable like that and a microphone shoved in your face, you're going to say some things. And honestly, it wasn't even that bad. It could have been a lot worse.
Ian?
Yeah, I don't think it'll affect his draft stock either. Like Chris said, at this point, teams know who can play, who can't play, and that wages way more over any type of post-game ramble or characters. We talk about the crab legs. As far as his comments go, I don't think he was – I've gone on the record as saying, I don't think it was the place for it. I think he could have handled that a little bit better. I think he should have waited until he was away from the university as far as affiliation goes. But, what Urban came out and said today that, Zeke has always been an emotional guy. And like Chris said, that's the first time he's lost. Some more stuff that Urban said today was Zeke's always been extremely loyal. Just an emotional week for everybody. Urban said they don't condone what he said that they squashed it. And Urban came out and said, I can't disagree with what he said. It wasn't the place for it. We do need to feed him more because he creates plays for us. For me, I think there was a different way he could have handled it. I know like you said, Jared, when you got a microphone in your face at the end of a loss, especially a tough loss like that, it's tough to keep it all together. I fully agree with what he said. I think he could have done it a little bit better. I think he could have waited until after the season. You still got, maybe 2 or 3 more games to go. And it almost seemed like he was abandoning his team. I know he wasn't. He came out and he apologized for it. But at the time, it's kind of like he's abandoning his team. He's like, I'm done here. I'm going to the NFL. He kind of made it sound like because he didn't get the ball enough, that's why he was leaving. I know that's not the case. I know he was just over-emotional, but I just think he could have waited a little bit longer to make those comments.
Yeah, it's a rough situation. Anyone who's played sports has felt the agony of defeat, but most of us have not felt the agony of defeat at such a high stake. Zeke, like Chris said, has not lost a game at Ohio State. That's crazy. He's a young kid. He's very young, and these reporters in today's world are constantly trying to get people to click on things on their website. They're always going to try to get you and keep digging at you to say something that you may regret. I'm sure he regrets saying that stuff. I don't think it was any slight against his team. Brittany, was he right in saying that? No, he was not right. Like Ian said, you should keep that in-house. That should be something that you address with the coaches privately. He did say it, though, and, I guarantee 100% he wishes he could take it back. However, he was right. Everything he said was right. Ed Warner's play calling has been awful this year. Zeke Elliott is the best player on the Buckeyes team. Nobody will argue that. He is their best player. He had 12 carries for 33 yards. 12 carries. 2 in the second half. That's insanity. He should get the ball. You should feed him. Ian, we've talked about it earlier in previous shows. They should be getting the ball 30 times a game. He got the ball
Exactly.
12 times in this game. He was right with what he was saying, but it was at the wrong time. He should not have said that. He's a young kid, and as for him saying he's leaving, everyone knew he was leaving. Everyone knew Zeke was going pro. His draft stock is so high, he's going to be an early first-round pick, but he shouldn't have said that. He should have kept it in-house. Now, I know a lot of Ohio State haters are out there saying, well, they should bench him, they should do all this. No, they should not bench him. They should not bench him. He's their best player. Would you bench, if it was your team and one of your best players said that, would you bench them against your bitter rival? No, you would not. He's a young kid. The coaching staff stands behind him. I'm sure he's made amends, okay? He didn't do anything crazy. Athletes do this all the time. It's just at a school like Ohio State or a school like Alabama, these big schools, anywhere like that, these kids are under such a fine microscope that if they step out of line anyway, it's going to get written about everywhere. It's going to be blown up. So, Brittany, I don't think he was right in saying that. He should have kept it in-house, but I do agree with everything he said. He was spot on. And Lenz, I don't think it'll hurt his draft stock. Like Chris said, in the NFL, all they care about is your abilities. They don't care about your character. They've proven that with Greg Hardy and players like Ray Rice and stuff like that. I'm not saying Zeke. I'm not putting him in that category at all with those guys. He's a fantastic player, and it seems like he is a good kid. But I don't think it's going to hurt his draft stock. I think he'll be an early first-round pick still. But thank you, guys. And Jake Parrish had one last question, which I kind of touched on a little bit. He said, assuming Warner gets fired, the offensive coordinator for the Buckeyes, who are potential candidates for the job? And in my opinion, Urban Meyer needs to take over more play calling. I don't think Warner's going to get fired. He probably should. Hasn't looked great this year, but I don't think he'll get fired. I think Urban just needs to take over more play calling. I don't know what you guys think about that at all. Anyone?
Yeah, I agree with you, Jared, in that sense. I don't think he will get fired. I think if you look back at when Urban took over, it was coming off the season where Luke Fickell was the head coach, and the Buckeyes had a rough go of things the year that Fickell was the head coach, and Urban said, you know what, this guy's staying on my staff. He's a good coach. He just wasn't ready to be a head coach. I know this is an offensive coordinator staying in the same position, but I think Urban's loyal to his guys. I think Urban's loyal to the guys on his staff. I think he'll keep them. But I think, like you mentioned, I think Urban's going to take over more moving forward as far as play calling goes on the offensive side of the ball.
He has to. He's a genius with the spread offense. He's proven that at every school he's ever been at as a coach. But he needs to take over more play calling. I know it's tough, but he's very good at it. So I would like to see Urban get more play calls. But Lenz, Chris, Brittany, Jake, thank you so much for the questions, guys. We appreciate it. So last week, we're going to move on to a little UC stuff here. Last week, we introduced a UC Rapid Fire. We had a ton of UC questions. Not as many this week, guys. So if you're a UC fan, get your questions in for Chris. He's our UC guy. So, Chris, are you ready for a little UC Rapid Fire?
Let's do it.
Awesome. All right, so Ken Rice wants to know, is there any talk or concerns regarding Tommy Tuberville and the future of UC football?
Absolutely. There's a lot of talk and there's a lot of concern. The fan base is not happy. They've gone from being used to being nationally ranked every year. I think 5 out of the last 6 years before Tuberville came around. They were finishing the year in the top 25. Of course, we all know Brian Kelly took them up to the top 5. So they're used to being up at the mountaintop here. Now we have a guy from the SEC and the Big 12 that's supposed to come in and take the fan base and the Bearcats to the next level. That was the whole pitch. Well, it's the next level, but it was a level down. It was a 9-4 season, followed by another 9-4 season, and now the Cats sit at 6-5. So yeah, people are restless. There's some serious concern that he may have his job taken away from him. However, I don't see it happening. I think his buyout is too high, and I think that the administration just would rather have a coach stick around more than 3 years and see what he can do with this final class in year 4. So I don't see Tuberville leaving, but there's more unrest in the fan base than ever before because of those high expectations. This was a league they were supposed to just run through. No one really knew or foresaw there was going to be teams that at one point had 4 top 25 teams in the college playoff, and Cincinnati wasn't one of them. And so the fans are upset about that, but I don't see him going anywhere. They're going to give him 1 more year.
right. And on our Twitter, thank you, Ken. That was a great question. Chris, great insight, brother. Another UC football question. This is from Danny V at DTV89 on Twitter. He wants to know who will be the number 1 UC wide receiver next year.
Okay, Danny, that's a good question because, as he knows, I'm sure Cincinnati's all wide receiving core is just about all seniors. Their top 5 players in yardage are going to be leaving. They're graduating. They're completely loaded this year, and Gunnar Kiel had a ton of weapons to throw to. So a lot's going to be moving on. However, there's a guy, Khalil Lewis. I have him picked to be the number 1 overall wideout. I think he's going to be number 1 on the depth chart, and he's going to get the most yards. He's a 4-star recruit that they kind of stole from West Virginia at the last minute last year. He's a redshirt, so he didn't get any playing time. But I see him coming in as a sophomore and doing big things as a number 1 guy next year.
All right. On to a little UC basketball. Danny V again at DTV89. Danny wants to know what games do you think UC will win and lose? I'm going to run through the games, and you tell me if they win or lose it. Butler.
Butler, home game. That's a W.
That's a W. Confident men. The crosstown shootout against the X.
Oh, gosh, this is going to be a very tough game. Number 23, Xavier. Number 24, Cincinnati. The last time Cincinnati went up to the Cintas Center, it was a big, ugly, nasty fight. There was blue paint thrown all over the place. It was a complete embarrassment, a meltdown, a blowout, broken noses, blood everywhere. I don't think it's going to be that chaotic. I think it's going to be very tough for Cincinnati to win there again, though. So I'm going to go with a loss. Sorry, I think they don't come away with a win on this one.
Wow, Yancey Gates might be throwing hooks if he hears this. All right, and next, Iowa State.
The biggest game in the non-conference slate. Iowa State right now is the number 4 team in the country. Coming to Clifton, the place is going to be bonkers. I will be there in attendance. I'd love to see them knock off the Cyclones. I do think they get it done. I'm going to go with a big W on this one. It'll be their biggest win of the year. They have more depth and talent than ever before. This team can put the ball in the hoop. They're lights out at home. I don't think they lose a home game. I'm going to go out on a limb and say that one as well. So I have them beating Iowa State.
Awesome.
Love it.
And last question from Danny V. Danny, great guy asking all these questions. Thank you, brother. He wants to know, will Jerron Cumberland start next season?
Very interesting question. 3 of the UC starters right now are seniors. They will be graduating, so there's going to be some room there. However, Justin Jennifer is going to be back. He'll take over the starting point guard role along with Troy Copain. You've got Jared Evans that needs to see some time. He'll kick over the number 3 spot. Gary Clark will be a junior. He's going to be a monster next year. He's going to fill the slack that Octavius Ellis left behind. That last spot is coming up for grabs. I have Kyle Washington and Cumberland battling it out. Kyle Washington, of course, the transfer from NC State. I think he edges out Cumberland because I think he may have had a promise from Mick that he could get some playing time very early. However, Cumberland is a highly recruited guy. He's a top 60 guy. It's going to be an interesting battle. I think Washington gets the spot.
All right. Danny, Ken, thank you for the UC questions. We appreciate it. Chris definitely appreciates it. So thank you for that. Let's move on to our Cincinnati Bengals. Chris, mine and your beloved Cincinnati Bengals. Fall again, we are officially on a losing streak, one of the first ones in years. 2-game losing streak for the Bengals right now after falling short to the Arizona Cardinals in Arizona. Lost on Sunday Night Football 31-34. It was a tough game. Bengals called back, and it felt like the Bengals blew that game. I was sick after that game. It felt like it was when we should have won. Nobody picked us except me last week. If you watched episode 9 of the Ohio Sports Radio Show, I picked the Bengals. But it was a tough game all around. Andy Dalton, in my opinion, he silenced some primetime critics. I know he gets a knock against them for not showing up on primetime, but Dalton finished 22 of 39 for 315 yards and 2 touchdowns. In my opinion, Chris, he did everything to give the Bengals an opportunity to win that game. What do you think?
Absolutely, completely agree with you. Anyone who says Andy Dalton was to blame for this loss doesn't know what they're talking about. I think we saw 2 different ends of the spectrum as Bengals fans these past 2 weeks. Last week on Monday Night Football, we saw a team that just wasn't ready or prepared to have to deal with what the Texans had coming for them and Brian Hoyer. Of course, they're a different team now. They look like they're actually making a run for that division. And then Sunday night, we saw a team that was way more competitive. They actually showed some fire, spark, and fight. I liked what I saw from the team much more than what I saw from them on Monday. So I see them turning a corner here. And you cannot hang your head losing on the road to a, let's just face it, a Super Bowl contender in the Cardinals. I didn't like to see them lose to Carson Palmer, but that is what it is. I have nothing against Carson. I actually wish him well, unless he's playing the orange and black. I think he came out and was actually very nervous throwing those 2 interceptions that were horrific. One of them went straight to Reggie Nelson like he was a wide receiver. So I don't know if he had some Bengals flashbacks on that play, but I had some high hopes that they were going to win this one. My heart was ripped from me. Somehow I have not calloused over my Cincinnati sports heart. I still feel pain. I don't know how that happens, but hopefully they'll get it back on the winning track coming soon. We have, let's see, next week, I believe they're playing
The Rams.
The Browns are in 2 weeks.
The
Okay,
Rams.
right. The Rams come into town. So, yeah, I have them getting back on the right track here with the next couple weeks.
Yeah, it was a tough game. I know you're a Cardinals fan. What's your thoughts? I mean, you're not a Bengals fan, but you do talk to Bengals fans all the time. But what was your thoughts on that game, man? I know we were texting a little bit during it.
Yeah, I like Chris mentioned about the last 2 weeks. The Bengals playing a lot better this week. You like seeing the fire that they played with this week. I think a lot of fans kind of converted away from the oh God, we're resorting back to the 90s and we're going to suck the rest of the year and 8-8's all we're going to get. I think a lot of the fans, you're still going to have the Dalton haters out there, but I think a lot of the fans realize that the Bengals played a great game. They did, and I think a lot of people took into account that, like Chris mentioned also, the Cardinals are a viable option for that NFC representative in the Super Bowl. It's tough going out there to Arizona. It's tough when you have to make that big of a trip, a Midwest team out into the desert. I think once Carson got settled down, I think it was game over. Being a Bengals fan, I may have, felt like that win was stolen away from me. I may have felt like, the Bengals were in it the entire time. Once Carson settled down, I didn't think it was going to be, I knew it was going to stay close, but I didn't think that the Cardinals would end up losing it. Like I talked about in the worst of the week, the penalties were a killer. The Bengals really shot themselves in the foot with that, but the refs didn't do them any favors. There was a ton of penalties called on the Bengals. I didn't see many penalties thrown on the Cardinals. I don't know if that's a home field advantage thing, but refs in general, they suck. I told you, Jared, I was kind of shocked that the Cardinals went for it on that last drive under a minute, but Bruce Arians is an aggressive coach. He went with it. He wasn't playing for overtime. He wanted to win it right there. I think the Bengals had momentum. I think he felt like if they went to overtime, perhaps the Bengals would go right into overtime and win the game. That 3rd and 2 call, I'm sure you guys have seen the Vine, but if you hand the ball off to Gio right there, that's a 10 to 15-yard gain.
So my thoughts, I'll get back to that because I'm on the other side of the coin on this one. That was a tough loss. No one picked the Bengals to win that, and I picked them because they're my favorite team, but I knew that was going to. If I looked at the schedule, say they had went into that game undefeated, that's a game where you're like, this may be their first loss. The Cardinals are a really good team, and in the first half, the difference of the game was the Bengals got pressure on Carson Palmer. When you get pressure on a quarterback, it speeds up their internal clock, and they start making mistakes. They start getting happy feet in the pocket. They got to Carson early. That's why he looked so bad. In the second half, they did not get to him at all. He hardly got touched. He did fumble that one ball, and Petco came out with it, and they called it Arizona's ball, which was weird. But I agree with you. I think the officiating was terrible. How was that not targeting and/or helmet to helmet on AJ Green? That was blatant as day, right in front of the official. Should have been called. There was on a punt return, Brandon Tate had a huge punt return that would have put the Bengals in scoring position, and instead they called a block in the back on Dre Kirkpatrick when he hit him in the shoulder, and he was looking at him face to face, which is insane. The penalty call on Pecco at the end of the game, Ian, you talked about it earlier. It was a terrible call. I don't know what he said. Obviously, we weren't on the field, so if he did say something, I mean, whatever, great call, ref. But I've never seen that call made in a game. Pretty terrible. And if the offensive lineman jumps and they call it on the Cardinals, it kicks them out of field goal range. So and there's a 10-second runoff. So the Cardinals had no timeouts, and game would have went to overtime. As for the third down call, a lot of people said that was a bad call on Hughes' part. Why didn't he just run the ball? Well, that was a read option play. It's Andy Dalton's call. Andy Dalton saw one-on-one coverage with his number one target, A.J. Green, who he had a smaller receiver on him. Andy Dalton will take one-on-one coverage with A.J. Green anytime. They fought all the way back. They were going for a win. They were not going for a tie. They wanted to win that game and get out of there. They did not want to go to overtime. He threw the ball. It was a bad throw. The guy got a hand on it. I don't know. I'm not trying to defend it. If he does hand it off to Gio, it looks like Gio would have got the first down. That's hindsight. Andy saw one-on-one coverage with his number one target and one of the best receivers in the league. He's going to throw it there every day, and I don't blame him for that, for taking a shot. It was a tough game. I mean, the defense looked terrible in the second half. To let Carson march down the field in 3 plays, I mean, it's so bad. I hate prevent defense. They should have got pressure on the ball. I don't know. In hindsight's 2020. You can look back and see all these things that they did wrong and they did right. At the end of the game, it didn't affect us in the playoff seeding in the AFC. It was a game that we showed a lot of fight. And for the Bengals fans out there dissing Andy Dalton, stop. The guy is a winner, man. He did everything to put this team back in. He marched them right down the field, scored, got him back in the game. You can't hate on the guy. Chris, you got anything
Totally
to say?
agree.
Yeah.
Totally agree.
Yeah, so just a tough game. Ricky Barker has a question about the Bengals. It's our only Bengals question of the week, so I'm a little disappointed in you Bengals fans, but I understand. Tough loss. You're still drinking your pains away. I understand. Ricky wants to know, do you guys think Hugh Jackson's tricky play calling hurts the Bengals more than it helps? Example, the Wildcat play call with Sanu that got a false start, delay game rather, and obviously the last offensive play of the game, the 3rd and 2 call. Chris?
Well, I've heard the announcers and writers call it cute. They use the term cute. They say, well, Hugh Jackson just got cute again. And as soon as I read that, I know that they're talking about some kind of a strange formation, a 4 wide receiver on one side, and Andrew Whitworth is lined up wide on the right side. So I know that they're going for this crazy offense that they're trying to gain points and do something fancy. Sometimes I wonder if he gets a little too fancy. I do think that it does hurt them at times. I think maybe Hugh may be auditioning for another head coaching job. He wants to become the hero. If it works, he's a genius. It's the most amazing play ever drawn up. I can't believe they scored on that play. And if it doesn't work, it was the dumbest play ever created. It's very high risk to do. You're setting yourself up for way more blame when you set calls up like that. As long as they get the ball in Gio Bernard's hands, I have seen that really work out for him. I think Hugh Jackson has been a godsend for Gio Bernard and Andy Dalton. Overall, Hugh has done more good than bad for this team. You can't argue that. But sometimes those plays do blow up, just like any other play would. But no, Hugh Jackson is the man. I credit him for their whole offensive turnaround completely. I would much rather have him than any other offensive coordinator in the game, especially Jay Gruden.
Yeah, I agree with you, man. And there's a time and a place for trick plays. The Bengals have enough talent to go right at teams. I don't know why they just don't do that. Quit lining your linemen up, 5 linemen out wide, and that's stupid. Just go right at teams. Gio has been killing it this year. Like you said, he's a perfect fit for Hugh's offense. I hope Mike Brown puts an open check or a blank check in front of Hugh and says, fill out what you want. You're staying here as my offensive coordinator because, in my opinion, he's gone after this year. I think he'll get a head coaching job. He's a huge, huge candidate. I know USC, other jobs want him big time, college, NFL. He's a huge candidate for the job. Tennessee wants him bad. And with Mariota, they want him really, really bad. He would have went with Zimmer, had Zimmer left and took the Tennessee job over Minnesota. So
right.
Bengals fans, enjoy him while you can. I think he's gone. Hopefully, Mike Brown and Katie Blackburn sit down with him and give him a blank check and have him fill it in, and they keep him as their offense coordinator. But I don't think it will happen. But
Yeah,
Ricky,
Mike Brown and Blake Check just don't go together, man.
well, Mike Brown, you got to credit him a little bit for keeping the system in place and signing these players long term. He's kind of he's old. I mean, if you saw him when they cut to him in the game, he's a goofball sitting up there reading like a newspaper with earplugs in because the noise is too loud for his 80 body.
And his $2 snapback netted Kmart hat.
His 1968 inaugural season hat, but yeah, it just I don't know. Katie Blackburn is the real deal. She's behind the scenes. A lot of people don't know that's Mike Brown's daughter. She has been key in signing everyone. So once he's gone, she's going to take over and hopefully appoints Marvin Lewis as GM, and they can get a coach like you, Mike Zimmer, somebody like that who knows their system. But Ricky, yeah, man, my answer to that is I think there's a time and a place for it. I don't think it hurts him. Like Chris said, I think Hugh Jackson has done more good than bad for the Bengals this year, clearly. But thank you, brother, for the question. E, we're going to move on to your Browns. On a bye week, we thought maybe things were looking great. Johnny Manziel came out. He's playing well. Everything's going great for the Browns, but the Browns are going to Brown, and things go on up there. For some reason, I feel so bad for you. For those of you who don't know, Johnny Manziel was videotaped in a club drinking after this is the same Johnny Manziel who went to rehab, got in trouble on the side of the road with his girlfriend, told the officer he only had 2 drinks. The NFL let him slide on that. Johnny Manziel stood on the podium in front of the media and said, I'm going to relax this bye week. I'm not going to do anything. I'm not going to get in any trouble. And here we are. Now at 8:43 p.m., as of right now, Johnny Manziel is the 3rd-string quarterback for your Cleveland Browns. When it rains, it pours up there, man. What are your thoughts on this?
Many are predicting that at the end of the season he's going to receive his release from the team. I read a somewhat humorous, I don't find any of this funny really, a tweet about, it seems like everything that Johnny did in that video, that's probably exactly what Mike Pettin called him into his office before the bye week and said, hey, don't do this. It seems like word for word probably everything he told him, hey, don't sing a song. Hey, don't be with the DJ in the DJ booth. Don't be holding a bottle of Dom Perignon. Don't be doing any of this stuff on our bye week. Don't take the focus away from the team. The reason I say it's not funny is, I wrote the article a couple weeks on Johnny, and, when we drafted him, wasn't a fan. I don't care for his off-the-field antics. I don't care for, just his demeanor in general. Is he a hell of an athlete? Yes, he is. But this guy's battling some demons. He's 22 years old. He spent 10 weeks in rehab before the season. And it's just, this is more than a football thing. This is a guy who cannot control himself. And I want the man to improve himself before I want the football player to improve himself. I feel bad for the kid. Like I said, I went on record saying I wasn't a fan of when we drafted him. I don't wish ill will against the guy, but at the same time, I want him to take care of himself before he tries to focus on a playbook again. He's got a lot of stuff to figure out. He's 22. We've seen this stuff happen to other athletes, and a lot of guys, they go down that road and they don't come back. And that would be a shame to see someone who has so much potential. The ceiling's high on this kid. He can become a good NFL player. He can become a good quarterback. But what he needs to do is become a better human being. And I'm not saying you're a bad person if you go out and drink. And I'm not saying you're a bad person if you go out and party. And a lot of people are taking to Twitter and taking to social media saying, well, it looks like Johnny Manziel got in trouble because he went out on a bye week and had a good time. That's not the focus of this. The focus of this is the guy has an alcohol problem. He spent 10 weeks in rehab and recovery, and nothing's changing. There for a while, it seemed like he was on the straight and narrow. He's not on the straight and narrow anymore.
No,
he came off the path. Something needs to click for this guy before it's too late. And like I said, it's not a football thing. It's a figuring out. It's a lot of self-searching and it's a lot of soul-searching. He's got to become a better human being before he focuses on football.
Manziel needs help. He's an alcoholic. He has a sickness. You don't go out. There is no quarterback in the NFL that you will see in the club celebrating on a bye week. None. None are doing that. Professionalism in the NFL, especially for a quarterback who is a leader by example, there is no quarterback doing that unless it's Tom Brady and he's just won a Super Bowl. That's when you see quarterbacks celebrating. You do not see them celebrating on a bye week after they just got out of rehab. He has a problem. He has a sickness. Manziel has to go. The Browns have to do what the Bengals did. The Bengals had this problem years ago with whether it be arrest off the field, DUIs, etc., etc. Marvin Lewis got rid of all of them. He got rid of Chad Johnson running his mouth. He got rid of T.O. He got rid of all these guys. The Browns have to do the same thing. I'm sorry, Manziel is a great athlete. He may even be a great NFL quarterback, but unfortunately it's not going to be for the Browns because he can't get his head on straight. Unfortunately, the Browns are back to square one, but I actually applaud Pettin for doing this, for standing up and saying, no, you're not going to keep doing this. He even said, I don't know why we keep talking about this. I don't know why I have to keep coming up here. Why can't the kid learn? Brittany Dunaway, this is the perfect time to ask her question. She has a second question. She wants to know, do you guys think Mike Pettin has a case against Manziel, or you feel like he just isn't a fan against Manziel? Like, do we feel like he has a case for what he said about him in the press conference and whatnot?
He definitely has a case. He definitely has a case for what he said in the press conference. For the longest time, when we talked about, McCown versus Manziel earlier in the season, we said, there's got to be something we don't see. There's got to be something that's, on the practice field. The reason Manziel isn't starting, he's the younger, he's the sleeker option. Why isn't Johnny Manziel starting? A lot of people go into this thinking that, Jimmy Haslam, the Browns owner, and Ray Farmer, the general manager, took Johnny Manziel without ever consulting Mike Pettin in the draft. The truth of all this is when Johnny Manziel was passed up by almost every NFL team in that first round of the draft, Manziel took to his cell phone, he texted the Browns quarterback coach at the time and said, draft me, let me wreck this league with the Browns. That text message got forwarded to Mike Pettin. Mike Pettin took that text message, went to Ray Farmer, went to Jimmy Haslam, and said, read this message, I want this guy on my team. Mike Pettin is a Johnny Manziel fan. But Mike Pettin is also a guy that sees what's going on. He sees that this guy has a problem. He sees that this problem is bigger than football. Mike Pettin wants Johnny Manziel to improve as a person before he gets back out onto the football field. Mike Pettin, if you search anything on this guy, he grew up in Pennsylvania, played quarterback in high school for his dad, and his dad is a storied high school coach out in Pennsylvania. And his dad was very strict with the players. They had a curfew. They wore shirt and tie on Fridays. And he's trying to do a little bit of that with Cleveland. He's saying, if you're going to mess up off the field, if you're going to mess up when we're not playing, you're not going to play. You have to be held. He's trying to do what you talked about last week about bringing in boys and building men out of them. He's trying to do that. And that's what he's trying to do with Johnny Manziel. He doesn't have anything against Johnny Manziel. He's trying to improve Johnny Manziel as a person.
I've said all along, I think Pettin should be the guy. Like, you guys need to do what the Bengals did. You have to keep a system in place. The Browns' job is a 10-year job. You have to flip this team and take it from what it is now and get rid of all the negativity. Hire new scouts because they're obviously not working for you guys. Get these guys in here who know what they're doing. Get these men in here and build a strong team around character. You guys, you say what you want about Andy Dalton. He's a professional, man. The guy does it all. It says it all. He's a winner. He does it all. Manziel, like I said, I think he may be a good quarterback one day, but I don't think it's going to be for the Browns. I just don't think so. I like Pettin, and I applaud him completely for doing this. I don't think he hates Manziel, but he definitely doesn't like having to get up in front of the media each week and talk about what's going on in Johnny Manziel's life. I know that when you're trying to focus on a team each week and win games, his job's on the line. Obviously, I mean, apparently his job's on the line. In Cleveland, if you don't win right away, your job's on the line. So he's got a lot on his plate already, and now he has to get up in front of the media and talk about Johnny Manziel this, Johnny Manziel that. That doesn't work in the NFL. These guys, you know what I wish? I wish a player like Adam Pac-Man Jones would call Johnny Manziel. Because Pac-Man is a perfect example. He was a nutcase when he came into the league with the Titans. He's insane. He came to Cincinnati, and yes, he's had his off-the-field issues, but he's made a good career in Cincinnati. Mike Zimmer turned him around. I wish someone like LeBron. Manziel looks up to LeBron. Cleveland connection. I wish LeBron would sit him down and say, man, what are you doing? What are you doing? You can be good. You have to learn to cut these negative people out of your life. You have to do this if you want to succeed, man. Otherwise, you're going to be that person that people are going to say, you remember Johnny Manziel? He was pretty good in college, wasn't he? Or you're going to have a Heisman vote, Johnny. That's all you're going to have. You're going to be washed up one day, and you're not going to be using your God-given ability to the extent that it should be used at. That's my opinion on it. I think you guys need to let Manziel go. Get rid of the negativity and just move on. He needs help.
Totally agree.
So we are moving on now. Let's move on to our NFL pick recap. It was another just atrocious week for us three in the picks. So again, if you followed us, bad week. Sorry. Bad beats, though. We can't have another one, right? It can't be 3 in a row, right? So, E, do you want to recap those picks?
Let's go for it. Week 11, Chris was our weekly winner. He went 8-6. That's his 5th weekly win. He moves into second place on the weekly wins. I went 7-7. I'm sitting in last place with 4 weekly wins. I think I'm going to end up having to wear a Pecco jersey for my profile picture. Jared, you went 6-8 for the week. You have 6 weekly wins. You are the leader in weekly wins. As far as overall records go, Jared, you're 97-62. Chris and I are both 92-67.
Oh, baby.
5 games behind.
It's a close battle. It's a close battle. Chris, congratulations, brother. So hopefully I can get back on my winning ways this week. Let's get into our NFL picks of the week. Week 12 of the NFL. You guys ready?
Let's do it.
Let's do it.
All right. First game, Thanksgiving Day. We got the Philadelphia Eagles on the road taking on the Detroit Lions. Chris, who do you have in this one?
I don't know if the Chip Kelly experiment is working because it's week 12 and we're still calling it an experiment. I think if it had been working, we would just say, Chip Kelly's a great coach. He's a genius. But it's an experiment. Experiments shouldn't take 12 weeks. This is also not his first year. The Eagles are trending down. The Lions showed some life and they're trending up. I'm going to think that Detroit actually gets this one done at home. I'm going with the Lions to just ruin the Eagles' year.
E?
A little bit of Thanksgiving Day history for you guys. The Lions are 35-38 on Thanksgiving Day. The Eagles are 6-0. I agree with Chris. I don't think the Lions are really playing for a playoff spot, but I will take a team when they are hot and looking like they're firing on all cylinders or doing anything that resembles good football. I'm going to go with the Lions at home on Thanksgiving Day.
Boy, do I hate this quarterback matchup. I hate Mark Sanchez, and I hate Matthew Stafford. If you've listened to any of our shows, you know how much I hate that round-faced asshole. I hate him. Matthew Stafford is good for 200 yards plus passing, 2-3 interceptions, and no touchdowns. Maybe a touchdown if he's lucky. He's been spoiled. He's had the best wide receiver in the league on his team, and he can't do nothing with him. However, I'm taking Stafford in the Lions in this one. I just think he's better than Mark Sanchez, and that's saying a lot from me. So I'm taking the Lions in this one. Next game, we got the undefeated Carolina Panthers on the road taking on the Dallas Cowboys with Tony Romo back. Chris, who do you have in this one? This is another Thanksgiving Day game.
Yeah, we get treated with a doubleheader, and everyone gets to stuff their face and watch the Cowboys and Lions. Only this time they're not playing each other. I do like how they keep them on the docket every Thursday on Thanksgiving, though. I'm going to go with a bit of a bold pick, not too bold actually, because I think the Cowboys have a ton of hope and a ton of stuff to gain from winning a game. They pretty much have to run the table here. They can't go 8-8 and expect to make the playoffs. I think they have to wish for some luck here, and it starts on Thursday. Carolina is not going to go undefeated. I'm standing by that, and I think it stops Thursday with the Cowboys at home beating the Panthers.
All right, E?
Cowboys are 29-17 on Thanksgiving Day. This is the Carolina Panthers' first Thanksgiving game. Not that I play too much into that, but I agree with Chris again. I think this is where the Cowboys show up. It's a winnable division for them. They're going to have to start winning games. Panthers pretty much have a playoff spot locked up. I don't think that means they quit playing, but I'm going with the Cowboys at home on Thanksgiving.
The Dallas Cowboys lost 7 games in a row without their leader, Tony Romo. Romo comes back, and they win. So anyone who wants to argue that Tony Romo is an elite, I preached it from the mountaintops. I think he's an elite quarterback. He's just like Andy Dalton. Doesn't get it done in the playoffs, but I still think he's an elite quarterback. However, I think the Panthers' defense is too good. Cam Newton is playing at an MVP level. I like the Panthers to win and stay undefeated in this Thanksgiving Day game. Next on the docket, we have the Chicago Bears and Mr. Fourth Quarter, Jay Cutler, on the road at Lambeau, taking on the Green Bay Packers in Thanksgiving night game. Chris, who do you have in this one?
Green Bay doesn't lose at home, although they did lose to the Lions at home somehow this year. It's been a crazy year, and like you guys said at the beginning, the last 2 weeks were full of upsets. I think eventually the averages are going to come around here, and the good teams are going to start beating the bad teams. We're going to start to separate the cream here as we get into these last 5 weeks. I have the Packers winning. I think they win by double digits. It's just too much for the Bears, too much offensive firepower. They lost 3 in a row, but they went back on the winning side last week. I think they keep it going. I'm going Packers.
Ian?
Packers 14-19 on Thanksgiving. The Bears 16-15 on Thanksgiving. Packers win when the lights are on them in prime time for Thanksgiving evening. I'll take the Packers.
Yes, as we all finish our dinners and lay awake on the couch barely with full stomachs and belts busting, and all of our girlfriends and wives are out shopping, we get to watch Green Bay Packers, Lambeau Field, Aaron Rodgers against the Bears, great divisional rivalry. But what makes this game so special is they're actually retiring Brett Favre's number in this game, and Bart Starr will be there. This is more than just a game for the Packers. This is a big game for that city. I like the Packers at home in this one. I think they demolish the Bears. Next game, we have the St. Louis Rams coming to Cincinnati against mine and Chris's Cincinnati Bengals. Chris, who do you have in this one?
I'm going to go with this to be my lock of the week. I'm going to guarantee a Bengals win. I'm not going to give them the kiss of death. We each get one guarantee a year. I want to pick this game to have them get off the schneid. These losing streak Bengals are going to end it here. They're going to beat the Rams at home. The place is going to be rocking, and I think the Rams are trending in the wrong direction. Bengals should be really focused for a W.
Ian?
Bengals fans, get behind your team. Sell that stadium out. Get back there. Get them back in the winning column. In the losing streak, Bengals win at home against the Rams.
I've said it once, and I'll say it every time this year. I'm taking the Cincinnati Bengals in every game. I don't care if they play the 85 Bears. The Rams are far from the 85 Bears. I'm taking the Bengals at home in this one. Get back on their winning ways. Let's go, Bengals. Next game, we have the Oakland Raiders on the road taking on the Tennessee Titans. Chris, who do you have in this one?
Two teams that are really up and down and hard to project. I could see this game going either way. Especially with it being at Tennessee, I want to give the edge to the Titans, but I think the Raiders are a better team. I think the Raiders have been slightly more consistent, and I feel like they have a better offense. So I'm going to go Oakland. I'm going to say they get it done on the road.
Ian?
Like Chris said, two streaky teams you can never predict. Titans got a good young core. I like Mariota a lot. Tennessee is actually the only team in the NFL that is winless at home. I'm going with the Raiders on the road in this one.
Mike Mularkey is the head coach of the Titans. Mularkey is also how his team plays. I'm taking the Raiders in this one. Next game, we have the Buffalo Bills on the road taking on the Kansas City Chiefs in Arrowhead. Always a tough place to play. Chris, who do you have in this one?
Your guy, Sexy Rexy. He couldn't get it done against the Patriots. He actually gave him more of a game than anyone thought. However, Kansas City is on fire. They actually have the number 6 seed wild card if the playoffs were to end today, which is a crazy thought. 5 weeks ago, who would have ever thought that? So I think they keep it going at home. They got all the momentum. The Bills are one of those teams they're battling it out for that last playoff spot with, and so for that reason, I'm going Kansas City.
Ian?
I've been burnt so bad on the Chiefs this year, so I'm going with the Chiefs finally.
Yeah. Rex Ryan, Chris mentioned it, a.k.a. Bill Belichick's bitch, got beat again. Yeah, I hate the Ryan brothers. I've made that clear. I'm taking the Chiefs at home in Arrowhead. Who would have thought without Jamal Charles that they'd be able to run off this many wins? But Andy Reid does one thing well, and it's control the clock. So I'm taking the Chiefs at home in this game. Next game, we have the Tampa Bay Buccaneers on the road taking on the Indianapolis Colts and Matt Hasselbeck. Chris, who do you have in this one?
This is my coin flip game, and I literally flipped a coin when I went to pick this game. Both teams are 5-5. The Colts play better at home. The Buccaneers just went completely berserk last week. I don't know if that was an enigma or what, but Jameis Winston seems to have a little bit of a groove going on. I'm going to go with the Colts, however, against my better judgment. I think that Matt Hasselbeck has more of experience with these type of games and these type of situations. Must win for the Colts. I think they get it done.
Ian?
I think this is a must-win for both teams. Like you said, they're both sitting at 5-5. Hasselbeck's 3-0 as the starter for the Colts this year. But like I talked about in my best of the week, that Buccaneers offense, Doug Martin's going to be running against the number 23 rushing defense, and Jameis Winston, who's coming off a huge week passing, is going up against the number 29 passing defense. I'm taking the Buccaneers.
I agree with Ian. I'm taking the Buccaneers on the road in this one. I like Jameis Winston. He's a poor man's Cam Newton, so I like Jameis and the Buccaneers to win this one. Next game, we have the New York Football Giants on the road taking on the Washington Redskins. Chris, who do you have in this one?
The Redskins are a team that you don't know what you're really going to get either. I don't think that Jay Gruden is a really good head coach. I don't think he knows what he's doing. I don't know how they've actually managed to win 4 games. They've been hit with a lot of injuries, but so has everyone else. They just have no consistency on offense or defense, and the Giants, while their play calling has been rough all year, they've been the more consistent team. They have more talent. I'm going to go New York Giants on the road.
E?
Yeah, I'm not a fan of Jay Gruden either. Chris, you talked about the Redskins have bailed him out and gotten him 4 wins. All 4 of those wins have been in Washington, though. I'm going with the Redskins on Sunday.
Ooh.
Wow. Yeah, I don't like Jay Gruden either. I don't think it's fair to call him a terrible coach because his crippled quarterback can't get on the field, and they refuse to activate him because of his ridiculous contract. RG3 sucks. I'm taking the Giants. I like Eli, and I like Odell Beckham Jr., so I just think they have more talent. I'm taking the Giants in this one. The New Orleans Saints, next game on the road, taking on the Houston Texans. Chris, who do you have in this one?
Another one of those teams locked in at 5-5. The Texans are on a bit of a roll after getting past our Cincinnati Bengals. Jared, I don't know what to think of them, but they're a different team, and it doesn't matter how much you win. It's when you win and when you get hot, just like baseball. So I'm going to go with Houston to get it done at home. They're playing like a playoff team, and they're going to have to battle it out with the Chiefs, but I think they get a win here against the Saints.
Ian?
I agree. I like the Texans at home on Sunday.
Yeah, I agree with you guys. The other Rob, or Ryan brother, Rob, is jobless right now. Thank God for the NFL, because that guy is a terrible defensive coordinator. He's been a defensive coordinator in Oakland, Cleveland, Dallas, and New Orleans, and with those 4 teams combined, he has 1 winning season. He's awful. The Saints defense is actually going to benefit by him being gone. However, that Saints defense is still terrible. DeAndre Hopkins is one of the best wide receivers in the league. The guy goes off every week. I'm taking the Texans at home in this one. Next game, we have the Minnesota Vikings on the road taking on the Atlanta Falcons in the Dome. Chris, who do you have in this one?
If this game was anywhere other than Atlanta, I would pick the Vikings. I liked the Vikings last week to upset the Packers. That didn't work out. I do think they're a good team, though. I just don't think they're a good enough team to win in Atlanta against Matt Ryan and their running game as well. So I'm going to go with Atlanta Falcons in this one.
We always talk about going into Atlanta and trying to win, how tough it is to get a win there in the Dome. Atlanta's dropped their last 2 home games. And Mike Zimmer is one of those coaches that's fiery. If they lose, it's not okay, well, we'll get him next week. He gets his guys ready to bounce back. I like the Vikings on the road to go into Atlanta and steal out a win.
Yeah, this was a tough game. This was one of the toughest games on the card for me. However, I took the Falcons at home simply because I like Julio Jones and Matt Ryan's my fantasy quarterback, so hopefully he goes off. I'm taking the Falcons in this one. Next game, we have the San Diego Chargers on the road taking on Chris's Jacksonville Jaguars. Chris, who do you have in this one?
Well, I got to go with my Jags. They're on a crazy winning streak. They've won 4 games now. No, really, I am going to pick Jacksonville over the Chargers. I think the Chargers are just a bad team. They had a lot of promise, and they let some things get away from them. And Jacksonville's finally hitting some kind of a stride on offense. I know that they won against the Titans, and that may not be too much to brag about. However, they do have some momentum going here, so I'm going to go Jacksonville.
Ian?
Chargers are just one of those teams that's been ravaged by injuries. I like the Jaguars to keep it going at home this Sunday.
Yeah, I agree with you guys. I got the Jaguars on this one. I love Blake Bortles. I think the kid's a stud. You surround him with weapons, Jaguars could be scary in a few years. I mean, he's a really good team, and that division's terrible. So I'm taking the Jaguars. Next game, we have the Miami Dolphins on the road taking on the New York Jets. Chris, who do you have in this one?
The magic of the coaching change in Miami has sort of worn off. They're on a little bit of a downtrodden here. The Jets desperately need a win. This is a great divisional game. This one could go either way. Both of these teams still have a shot at a playoff. The AFC wildcard picture is wide open. I think the Jets win this game, though, and they keep it close, but I have the Jets over Miami.
Ian?
The Jets right now reminded me a lot of the Falcons. You know, the Falcons started off 5-0, and everybody talked about how good they were, and they've started to lose a few games. The Jets started off hot with their new head coach, Todd Bowles, but they've lost 4 of their last 5. Like Chris mentioned, the Dolphins, kind of the new head coach thing's wearing off, but I like Dan Campbell to go into New York and get a win on Sunday.
Yeah, I agree with you, Ian. If Geno Smith gets anywhere near a football, that's a guaranteed loss. He's terrible. I like the Dolphins, man. Dan Campbell is a hard ass, and I love it. He's got these guys playing hard. I know they've lost a few games, but if they can feed Lamar Miller, I think I like their chances in this one. So I'm going to take the Dolphins on the road in this game. Next game, E, we have your Arizona Cardinals on the road taking on the god-awful San Francisco 49ers. Ian, who do you have in this one?
Well, like Chris mentioned his lock of the week earlier, this is my lock. I'm going to Arizona. They're firing on all cylinders. 49ers are atrocious.
Yep. Chris?
Yeah, Arizona's good. 49ers are bad. This is an easy pick. Give me the Cardinals.
Yeah, I have the Cardinals in this one, too. This is a lock, easiest pick on the card. The 49ers are terrible. They got to pay Kaepernick so much money. His money was guaranteed if he got injured, and he's out. So, yeah, I'm taking the Cardinals in this one. Niners stink. Tom Sula is awful as a head coach. Next game, we have the Pittsburgh Steelers on the road taking on the Seattle Seahawks and the 12. Chris, who do you have in this one?
This is a tough game. I think both of these teams are starting to turn it around. Thomas Rawls in Seattle has just been on another level. They've integrated him into that running game like they should have done with Marshawn Lynch had he been healthy the whole year. But he opens up a new dimension with the short passing game for Russell Wilson that they've been missing all year. I like Seattle at home. I think Pittsburgh's a good team, but I think Seattle gets it done. And maybe there's a little bit of wish in there, too. I like to get some distance between the Steelers. And any time they lose is a good time.
Ian?
Yeah, I heard earlier in the week that Marshawn has a groin injury. I'm not sure if he's playing or not. If he isn't, that means Thomas Rawls is getting the brunt of the carries. They're a better offense right now when Rawls is playing. Just like what Chris said, I like the Seahawks to get this one at home against the Steelers.
Yeah, this is a tough game. I think the Steelers, if Big Ben is healthy, they're always going to be a good team. However, going into Seattle is a tough place to go in and play and win. Rawls will be the starter. I think Marshawn Lynch is actually going to be out for the year with a sports hernia. So he's seeking a specialist, but it looks like from what I'm hearing from the reports I've read that he will be out for the season. Like Chris said, and E, like you said, he is a monster. I like Rolls a lot, so I'm taking the Seahawks to beat the Steelers, hopefully, in this one. Next game, Sunday Night Football, the undefeated New England Patriots on the road taking on the Broncos, the Denver Broncos, and Brock Osweiler. Chris, who do you have in this one?
I think this is going to be the funnest game of the week to watch. Besides, of course, Thursday with everyone just stuffing their face and watching TV, this is going to be the game to watch. At the beginning of the year, I had this game looked at to say, well, this is going to determine the bye week in the AFC playoff picture. It still could. I didn't think that New England would be 10-0, and I didn't think that the Broncos would be manningless, but this is going to be a tight game. If the New England Patriots lose a game, it's going to be this game. But I'm going to pick New England against my heart because they have to prove that they're vulnerable and are able to lose a game. They just find ways to win. They are the least penalized team in the NFL. Bill Belichick's a smart man. The Patriots play with smart plays. So I'm going to go with New England here on the road.
Ian?
Something that really impressed me with Osweiler and the Broncos on Sunday, Osweiler didn't light the world on fire. He did enough to get him to win, though. He didn't turn the ball over. If your quarterback's not turning the ball over and you got a defense like you do in Denver, I'm going with the Broncos. The Patriots lose their first game this week.
Yeah, I think I'm going with Chris. I'm taking the Patriots on the road in this one. Belichick against a quarterback who's hardly started. Come on. I mean, he's the best coach of all time. The Patriots are banged up. They're really banged up. But honestly, if I'm a Bengals fan, I'm rooting for the Patriots because this is a playoff seeding game. The Bengals want the 2 seed, and we're rooting against the Broncos at all costs right now. They're on our heels, so I'm taking the Patriots in this one. Hopefully they can stay undefeated. That pained me to say, actually. Next game we have this is going to be an awful, awful game. Monday Night Football, the just absolutely beat up Baltimore Ravens against your Cleveland Browns. Just 2 shit show teams. Awful, awful Monday Night Football. Can they flex out of this game?
They cannot.
Okay. Ian, who do you have in this one?
Josh McCown taking back over the starting role. He's proved that he can do what it takes to win. Just sometimes it doesn't happen. Every time the quarterback's played this year for the Browns, it hasn't been the quarterback play. They've done well with whoever they put in there. The Ravens suffered 2 huge injuries last week. Screw you, Ravens. Screw you, Art Modell. I'm going with my Brownies on Monday night to get it done up in the land.
Chris?
The Art Modell Bowl. Yeah, I agree with Ian. I think the Browns want this game more than the Ravens. The Ravens are just trying to let this nightmare be over with already, and the Browns are trying to prove that they can win a game without Johnny Manziel. So I'm going to go with Cleveland at home.
Whereas the Cardinals and 49ers was the easiest pick of the week for me, this was the second easiest pick of the week for me. The Browns will destroy the Baltimore Ravens. The Ravens are without Flacco. They're without Forsett. Terrell Suggs out the whole year. Their defense is awful. The Browns aren't that bad on offense. I know they don't have the best skills players, but they have a great tight end. They have great wide receivers. McCown, I guess, if he plays well like he has earlier in the year. But I think the Browns dominate. I think they're a better team. The Ravens are terrible, and it's scary to think that the Ravens may get the number 1 pick. It's scary to think that because they're not as bad as their record is. They've just been beat up by injuries. But I'm taking the Browns. Monday Night Football. I may not even watch this game because I got a feeling it's just going to be ugly. So ugly. But those are our picks of the week. Real quick, we're going to end the show with our bold prediction for this upcoming week of sports. Chris, what is your bold prediction, sir?
Okay, with the college playoff poll coming out again, the weekly poll, Notre Dame was bumped out of the top 4 for the first time since the college playoff poll started. They were jumped by Oklahoma. So my bold prediction is I think they find a way to get back into that poll, and they have to find a way to win at Stanford. Oklahoma has to drop a game, but I think the Irish find a way to sneak back in even without that 13th game.
Ian, what is your bold prediction?
I'm going to stick with Chris and stick with the college football playoff idea. Everybody listening, shit's going to get real this weekend. Auburn's going to knock off Alabama.
Ooh.
It's going to give Ole Miss the tiebreaker for the SEC championship. Ohio State, we're going to take on Michigan. We're going to beat them. Penn State's going to go into East Lansing, knock off Michigan State. Everything's going to get flip-flopped, turned around. You're not going to know where to look. Just listen to Ohio Sports Radio. Listen to me. Ohio State still has a shot. Everything's going to get wild this week.
Ian, if your bold prediction comes true, I can tell you that my liver is going to have a rough weekend. But my bold prediction, Andy Dalton only needs 262 yards to join Peyton Manning as the only two players in NFL history to pass for 3,000-plus yards in each of their first 5 NFL seasons. My prediction is Andy Dalton beats that record and joins Peyton Manning. He will get over 262 yards against the Rams this week. They have a good defense, but I like my Bengals against the Rams. Also, I think my Columbus Crew will go into New York and finish it off. They will win the Eastern Conference, and they will go on and represent the East in the MLS Cup. Tons of great sports this weekend. Fantastic weekend. Enjoy it with your friends and family. Thanksgiving, enjoy, be thankful for what you have. There's a lot of people who don't have the things that you do. Enjoy what you have. Happy Thanksgiving from the Ohio Sports Radio to all of you guys. Chris, Ian, you have anything else to say?
Go Turkey, go football.
Happy Thanksgiving, everybody.
Happy Thanksgiving, everybody. You guys are awesome. Thank you for continuing to follow our stuff. Check out our YouTube page. We're posting all these videos on our YouTube page. Just search Ohio Sports Radio. Check out our website, ohsportsradio.com, updating daily with new content. Follow us on Twitter, @Ohio Sports Radio. Like our page on Facebook, Ohio Sports Radio. Comment, interact with us, guys. Thank you to everyone who continues to ask questions. You guys are the best. We love doing this. It's fun. Chris, Ian, I appreciate your guys' hard work. Everyone enjoyed turkey. And Ian, who day, Ian? Who day?
We bark together.
Thank you, guys. See you next week. Happy Thanksgiving.